everyone, this is Mini Ninja speaking. Welcome to a bit of a different video for my channel. This video is actually a quick and dirty beginner's guide to Curses and Chaos, a game by Tribute Games that came out just this week for the PlayStation Network as well as Steam as a digital download title. To describe Curses and Chaos in a nutshell, you're playing as one of two playable heroes out on a quest to end the rule of the evil Wizard King, but of course there's a little bit of a fly in the ointment, being that the Wizard King, being not too happy with your actions, has actually cursed both your characters with an affliction that makes them constantly pursued by monsters as well as death itself. The only way to get rid of the curse will be to collect a number of items, which are pretty much picked up during your fights, in order to mix them together and eventually make the mysterious Elixir of Life, which is said to be able to fix any curse that you've been afflicted with. In this case, you're assisted by the rogue alchemist Allison, as well as her trusty pet Oliver, in order to kind of travel along the place and get all these items necessary. Just to put it out there, the particular version I'm using for this recording is a Steam version, which although all the button prompts show the PlayStation controls on there, I'm actually using an Xbox 360 controller for this, so I will be making reference to both styles of control, or the equivalent of buttons. And also that anything I do mention on this particular recording in terms of any kind of dirty tricks may not necessarily apply if they end up updating them out of the game later on. With that said, let's begin. Alright, first off, let's go over the basic controls. I'll start with the PlayStation controls, followed by the 360 in this case. Your square/X button is your basic attack button. On the ground, it's a single punch which has a bit of a delay to it after you attack itself and only does 1 damage. It's good for your basic enemies, but as you get later in the game, this will unfortunately become a little more useless as time goes on unless your placement is perfect. Although I should mention, if you hold up on the ground while hitting your punch button, it will actually do an uppercut which does 2 damage. It's good for hitting vertical enemies when they're close enough, but it's a bit harder to hit anyone that's on the same plane as you, just as a bit of a warning. Next main button up will be your X/A button, which is your basic jump. You can actually double jump in this game, and depending on how hard you hold the button down, will actually change the velocity in terms of vertical height of your jump. So if you want to do a short hop, you can do that by just slightly tapping the button, and if you want to go for a longer jump, you need to hold the button down. You need to make sure you hold the button down and press it at the top of your jump to get the most out of your double jump though, because certain enemies that are higher up, as they will be displayed later on, can only be hit at basically the peak of your double jump. When you're in the air, you do a jump kick attack, which actually does 2 damage instead of 1, and you'll actually be using a lot of your jump kick attack because when you land, it actually cancels right out of your attack back to an idle standing state, and generally you can short hop in and out of it fairly easily, meaning you can get more damage out of that way. Your next main button is actually going to be your triangle/Y button, which is your item use button. As you notice in the course of this video here, I'm going through a sequence of items here, and basically that's how you actually get around to using them. If you hold up and the triangle/Y button, you actually throw away the item you have in hand at the time, which might be good if you need to kind of juggle things. As I've already shown in this video, as long as you keep touching the items you have in hand, they won't actually disappear off into nothingness for you, so it's a good way to kind of juggle items between waves, if you happen to have 2 things which you want to keep a hold of and might be able to get an immediate usage of. Your last button is actually, or last base button I should say, is your circle/B button, which actually calls Oliver off from the sidelines in order to pick up whatever item you happen to have in your immediate possession, in order to store it off to the side there. That's what Oliver's little icon in the bottom right corner is about. You also hit the same button in order to call Oliver back in order to drop off the item you had in storage. The last real button that's going on here will actually be the R1 button/RB button, or right button, on the 360 controller, which is your run function. You can actually use that to run along the ground, and it'll basically speed you up not only in your general running as well as jumping, but if you hit the attack button while running, it does an alternate attack on the ground, which actually does 2 damage, which is much better than your standard attack button. The only caveat I give you is you do slide around a bit while using it, and there is still a bit of a delay from attacking on the ground, so you still probably want to rely more on your jump kick in order to get things done. Actually, there is one more function I did forget to leave out. If you hold the down button while on the ground, you actually do a bit of a silly dancing motion that's different for each character, and if you're wondering what the damage, or what the whole point of dancing is, Realistically, it's just a points multiplier. The last function, which I did leave out until just now, is actually if you hold down while on the ground, you actually go into a bit of a dancing animation, which periodically generates more points for you. The reason why this might be important is because of the next bit which I'm about to mention is, as you've also noticed in the course of this video, there's a chain number that does count, or chain counter that counts up as you defeat more enemies. Every 10 or so enemies you defeat, the counter actually generates a multiplier for the points you get, in terms of not only general kind of point, but points in general, which you're aiming to get a higher score for. So basically, when you do 10, it doubles your points. 20, 3 times, quadruples 4 times, so on and so forth. In terms of a little more in-depth tricks, here's a few things you need to know about how this game works. 1, none of the waves in this game are randomly generated. You're gonna get the same series of enemies at the exact same time every time you play. What this means is you can actually use this information in order to kind of stockpile certain items as they appear. To give you an example, after you beat the stage 2 boss, which is I believe a Chimera, suddenly fire elemental items start appearing as part of the item drops, and actually appear fairly early on within the next stage following that. Knowing this, you can go and make sure you collect the items as they come along, and actually quit the game, believe it or not, and the game will save your items as you have them collected and equipped on your characters into your next startup. While this does kill a few extra seconds getting back in and out of the menus to get your items, it does help you stockpile a few of the more basic items that don't normally come across in a little more of a timely fashion, which will be useful especially as you're trying to build up the items for the Elixir of Life later on, or just generally build them for more powerful item. The next thing you need to know is that anytime you come across a new item of any sort, it will appear within Allison's caravan as an item you can purchase later on. So that basically means as long as you actually collect the item, and I'm not even sure you need to go that far as much as see the item, you can actually purchase it later on. While this is good for kind of lower end building items, you can buy more expensive items such as the 1-up, magic lamps, and berserker items, as you can, for just some examples there, but they are a bit on the pricier side. Your best bet is just to collect the base materials in order to build them up and get to them that way. The last things I really need to mention are actually related to the multiplayer for this game, being that while you do have 2 playable characters and you can play them both at the same time with a friend, what you need to remember is you only have 1 pool of lives to deal with and only 1 Oliver to help you out. What this means for you is that basically while each character I believe can switch and swap the reserved item out, you can only have 1 reserved item between the 2 of you at a time, because Oliver can only carry so much. And in terms of lives, that means you have a pool of 3 lives, which between the both of you have to last the entire round, for all the waves and the boss. So just keep that in mind. Both of you keep a careful eye on your health totals, and you'll be able to get through things. Thankfully, with the extra set of hands, you should be able to get through the enemies a little bit faster in order to go through there. Good luck, thank you for watching, and catch you all later.